Well, it's a response to Stephen Chung in the White House and his use of that word. I don't think they understand any other kind of language, so I have no apologies for standing tall and firm and pushing back against their cruelty, and if it requires more clear language,
Recently, the press office called Stephen Miller a cuck on Twitter. How do you differentiate yourself from Trump if you're using state and personal social media accounts to name call and attack him?
well, it's a response to Stephen Chung in the White House and his use of that word. I don't think they understand any other kind of language, so I have no apologies for standing tall and firm and pushing back against their cruelty, and if it requires more clear language, requires a recognition that things have radically changed with Trump presidency, then I will assert myself as I feel fit, and I'll do so with clarity and conviction. The difference between Donald Trump and the Trump administration and the state of California and the work that's being done by many elected officials here is we don't just exercise our formal authority, we also exercise our moral authority.
Governor Newsom, last week we saw that the Core Civic California City former California prison has now been renamed the California City Immigration Processing Center. What is the state of California planning as far as health and safety oversight or other constitutional oversight of that facility when, if and when it reopens as an ICE processing?
So California, and we had advanced in the first Trump administration, California updated and advanced a lot of its oversight rules and regulations as it relates to the authority of the state that's vested in us as it relates to the specific issue of health and safety. We also had to recognize that we had to reconcile the federal jurisdiction, and there were certain limits as it relates to our direct involvement and direct engagement. The good news is, having gone through a version of what we're experiencing here today, but not at the scale of the cruelty that we're experiencing, that we had updated a lot of those rules and regulations, including resourcing members of the Department of Justice, specifically the AG's office, to provide that kind of oversight. I specifically had on this topic conversations with immigrant rights leaders about what their expectations were in terms of that support, how we can coordinate, collaborate, and share information, and that is our intent as it relates to that specific facility as well.
Governor, I talked to Sabrina Medina from Temple Park today. She's met 6 weeks ago when housing was raided by federal agents. Today she says her kids are afraid to go out.
Yeah.
They're
of course.
afraid to go out. They're afraid to go out to shop. She wants the whole leaders to have police not be that involved in ICE operations around the city. What do you have to say?
Well, they're not. I mean, under the tenets, the police officers are not to aid and abet.
They're escorting them.
As it relates to the issues of these raids, it's very clear as it relates to the policies, local policies, which distinguish themselves from state policies, that is not the role of local law enforcement. The role of local law enforcement is to create a framework of trust. As it relates to safety of individuals, be it their state employees, local employees, or federal employees, they have a responsibility as it relates to public safety. So I'm deeply mindful of that. There's a balancing act there, but when it comes to the safety of officers, I wish them no harm. Most of these folks have been conscripted. I mean, the National Guard men and women are heroes. A lot of you were out there taking selfies with them. Biggest issue they had in places like Santa Monica is so many, jugs of water came, so much food came. We were really proud of them. They're the same people. They're just under now a jurisdiction of someone who's unhinged by the name of Donald Trump. And so I want people to recognize that and respect that. So it's about public safety in that respect, broadly defined. That safety includes federal employees as well.
Governor, do you anticipate if there's a problem with, do you anticipate a possibility of a further drawdown of the National Guard and or shipping the Marines back to their base, given the rules that Washington wants as far as the ability of ICE officers to arrest anybody who attacks federal officers? The White House on the 11th said literally anyone who throws rocks, whatever, assaults federal officers, they're freeing up ICE to actually if those rules of engagement hold, are you anticipating a further drawdown because there's no need for soldiers or anyone else to provide any kind of a buffer around ICE officers doing those type of operations?
Yeah, again, the utilization rate, the mission tasking of roughly 5,000 military personnel is about 5%. They claim it's 26.6%, and that's because they're in an operational readiness, but they're in Los Alamitos, an hour and a half away. They're sitting there behind the walls looking for things to do. 5%. So as it relates to the drawdown, they're a solution right now in search of a problem. But more importantly, I think this is the issue that I think we want to highlight. This is a preview of things to come. If you think this is about California, you are fooling yourself. These are operations you're going to see all across the United States of America. They've tested the boundaries of the law. They've tested the boundaries of public perception and what the public will accept. And they're going to export, including potentially members of our own state National Guard, to other states. So when they draw down and demobilize, the question is, for what? To go where? Under whose command, whose control? And to me, that's a more interesting question, is what ultimately becomes of these members of our National Guard. But look, you recall, we had close to 1,600 officers at certain points at the peak of what was going on in a couple square blocks or a couple blocks in Los Angeles. CHP officers and LAPD were protecting the National Guard. To your question, not the other way around. That's how absurd this whole thing has become. You would think there'd be some congressional oversight, but those guys have disappeared. Speaker Johnson, in name only. We can get to that. Question is how long he'll be Speaker. They're, of course, trying to change the game on that. That's a separate conversation.
Well, Will the troops be used for fire protection now that they're going to be released? What's the plan here?
Well, I want to get them back under my control so we can get them back doing the kind of work to control wildfires, to keep our communities safe, to address the issue of counter-narcotics, to address the issue of fentanyl. I want to remind you guys, I put 394 of your National Guard men and women years and years ago on the border. I've hardly been timid. I've deployed the National Guard in multiple locations, multiple times. Going back to George Floyd, one of the largest deployments in U.S. history. With thousands of them, the 49th Infantry, the MPs rather, that were out there on the streets after the fires. They need to get back doing the rattlesnake teams, which are basically teams that work in partnership with other state agencies and conservation corps and CAL FIRE to do the vegetation and forest management, hundreds of them. So they'll be reassigned when they come back under our control. About 190 were already redeployed. The rest will start coming back as they're demobilized. I want to get them back in our counter-narcotics efforts and our drug interdiction efforts and the task forces that have been firmly assigned, and to support Border Patrol as it relates to some of that effort, not just what's coming in north, but what's going down south with all the gun running and cash that are going through, including those tunnels that I had the opportunity to explore and witness firsthand with my National Guard, or your National Guard, just a matter of months ago. So that's part of it. But I also want them back teaching our kids. I want them back walking the beat with their masks off, building trust, sense of community. And I'll tell you, the most damaging thing about what's going on right now is other law enforcement agencies, these good folks, are being impacted because people are losing trust in local law enforcement now. They don't know who is who. This is, if you wrote this script, some Hollywood's going to say that doesn't pass any test.